Hello, welcome to the February 6th, 2026 Club Cubase livestream. My name is Greg Undo and I'm the host of the livestream today. If you've not attended a live stream before, how it works is you can ask questions in the live chat field or send questions in advance to clubcubase@steinberg.de. When asking questions, if you could specify which version of Cubase you're running, so if it's Cubase LE, AI, Elements, Artist, or Pro, which version numbers, if it's 13, 14, 15, and the operating system that you're on, whether it's Windows or Mac OS, that information is helpful, or if you're running other Steinberg programs. When asking questions, if realize that my ability to answer questions in a real-time manner I'll probably be falling behind, trying to keep up with the live questions. So if you have questions, and you don't see an immediate response to, you could just simply, if you want to, just hang on. We'll get through all the questions chronologically as asked. So if we could avoid repeating the same questions, that would be appreciated. As we're going through the live stream, we should have several hours after the live stream ends. All of the topics that are discussed in today's live stream pinned to the top of the comments field with timestamps. And if you want to search for previous Club Cubase live streams for topics, we have over 43,000 questions and topics. You could go to cubaseindex.com and you could search there. We want to thank Jan from Stockholm for creating that site. We also have two people that serve as moderators. So if you want, we want to give a special, express our gratitude to Jazz Dude and Agent K for their work. They're not Steinberg employees. They just really make it a better community experience. So we'll give special thanks to them. And also an extra round of gratitude we'll express to Jazz Dude for his work with the unofficial Cubase Nation Discord. So it's a wonderful resource of information for the Steinberg community. So if you wanted to, download, there's different presets, links, tutorials. It's a great area, and it's really beneficial to the Steinberg community. So we'll give Jazz Dude a special thanks for that. Today, I'm presenting from outside of Washington, D.C. area in Alexandria, Virginia, in the United States. Once again, my name is Greg Undo. I work for Yamaha Corporation of America, where I primarily focus on Steinberg products. If you are watching this live, please feel free to introduce yourself and tell us where you're from. And with that, we will go ahead and get started. Just a quick programming note, on Tuesday's live stream, we'll probably be going a little shorter than normal, so we may be just doing 2 hours. My wife is out of town. I had to go pick up my son from school on Tuesday, so just a quick programming note with that. All right, so with that, we will go ahead and get started and seeing some questions probably pop in now. So let's see, we have Claes joining from Malmo, Sweden. We have Michael Marshall from Somerset in the UK. And we see Jazz Dude on. We have Craig Sibley joining from Kingston, Washington. Great to see you on. Hope you're feeling all better. We see VS Terranova joining from Amsterdam in the Netherlands. We also have Soren joining from Sweden. All right, and we see Virtual Island, I believe, from Scotland, if memory serves correct. Let me see, I think I just got... Okay, so I just see from an email I just got from, I believe, Beverly Beatty. It says, in a prior video I saw in Club Cubase livestream, put a bass track into heavy compression. That bass was triggered by a 4/4 kick drum. The bass was a sidechain configuration. It sounded really cool. Based on this described scenario, if the kick is temporarily muted for a few bars, yet the bass still continues and is still under the heavy sidechain compression, then how do you keep that heavy compression vibe on a bass track when the kick is off / muted? Would it not change the vibe of the compression on the bass track if the kick was not on? It says, would it be possible that it would need some ghost note or sort of something on the vibe of that bass continuously going. It says, all right, so let's take a look. So if we want to have kind of like that scenario, but maybe we don't want to hear the kick, but we still kind of want the pumping nature of a sidechain, we'll come over. Let's see if I have this still in my recent projects. It probably should. Let me just open up a project to show this. Okay, so first we'll show how to do kind of a sidechain scenario. So let's say we have this scenario here where we're do a typical kind of sidechain source here where we have, let's say, a kick and a bass, and we want to be able to have the kick kind of cut through by simply taking the bass. So we have our kick drum here. All right, so a lot of times instead of having to do like really creative automation, what we're able to do is just to come over here, and I'm going to place a compressor plugin. I'm just going to do like a standard compressor, and I'm going to apply compress it pretty heavily, and I'm going to activate sidechain. And we go to activate the sidechain. So this button here would tell it that this plugin is looking for a sidechain input. We will now come over here and tell it what track we want. So I want that particular kick drum to do the sidechain. All right, so now as we do this, as we listen to it, so every time that kick comes in, the bass, the synth bass gets compressed down. So we open up the compressor just to look at it visually. And if we want to adjust our release here. All right, now if we actually don't want that particular kick drum to be heard, but we still want the resulting file of it, if we want it, there's kind of two different approaches. One is just to take this particular kick track, and where it says routing, I'm going to choose no bus. So it's still going to be routed to the sidechain if I remember. So if this is not going out of the stereo bus, we could still, so when it's being routed out to the stereo bus, we're going to hear it. But if I just send it to no bus, still have the result of the sidechain compression. Another method that we could use if we wanted to just come right over here, we could say, we'll send this out of my stereo out. I'm going to select the particular event. And from that particular event, I think if we do a render in place and we go to our render settings, we probably want the complete signal path. And we'll come over here and we will, once we have, we're going to say I have that particular event selected. I will say render. And now that we've rendered it in place, I could see the if we compare the two audio files here. So this is with the synth track, kind of before it was sidechained, but if we do a render in place, and again, that's edit to render in place, we could go to the render settings. You want to probably choose complete signal path there, not dry. Channel settings may also work, but complete signal path will work. And then what we see is the audio file that's rendered. And we can see that every time where this kick drum comes in, we can see the result in the audio waveform that we see the volume level kind of duck down because the compression's kicked in and then it's released and kicked in. So every time that kick drum comes in, we can see the end result here reflected on the audio file if you do a render in place. So let me know if that's helpful for you, Beverly. And thanks for joining us today. We see Papa Vol joining from New Jersey. Says, thanks, Greg, for pointing out on the last session I used the wrong keyboard shortcut target for create sampler track. So I'm glad that was an easy solution. All right, so we see Zephaniah joining, and he asks, hey, Greg, I can't get any sound to play on my chord pad. How can I fix that using Pro 13 on PC? So generally, the chord pad would need to have like a particular instrument that is activated or selected for it to be sending the MIDI to. So we'll just open up a quick project here. So let's say, okay, we have like Rhodes piano here. I go to my chord pads. Okay. So now when I come over here, I'm going to activate the chord pads to turn it on. And I will just have this play plain chords for now. And I think I may have this also going through maybe another. See if I have any other delays on. So make sure, one, that it is turned on. If you could also check the inputs. So if you have a specific MIDI input that's set up, so let's say if I have this set to my panorama, you may not have that, you know, if it's probably set to all MIDI inputs or to the actual chord track. So try to make sure that that is set to all MIDI inputs, and then you should be able to trigger those chord pads and make sure that the chord pads are actually turned on, because that could affect that as well. All right, so we see Overly Focused joining from Phoenix, Arizona. Thanks for joining us this morning for you. All right, we have Pertti Komenen joining from Finland. Great to see you on. All right, Craig Sibley just says, could you please cover the DAW project for importing and exporting between Cubase and other DAWs? Yeah, I'm not sure if I have a DAW project file, but let's say if I want to take a particular quick project here. Okay, so let's say I have my project.
Do you recall the day we first met? That was a long, long.
So now when I come over here, let's export it as a DAW project. So we'll come over here. We'll call it February 6th. Today's my brother's birthday. All right, so I'm going to put this on desktop. Or all right, we'll make a new folder. Okay, so I'm going to close this project here. And let's get to, we'll create an empty project here. And let's import the DAW project. And now we play back.
Do you recall the day we first met? That was a long, long time.
So I think currently programs that support it, I know Cubase does on iOS and Android. I believe Bitwig and Studio One. I'm not sure which other DAWs have incorporated it yet, but it's a great way for lots of people that are migrating from PreSonus, or I guess now Fender products, to Cubase, and from Bitwig directly into Cubase. So it's kind of a more advanced project interchange format. So hopefully most of the other DAW companies will support it. So I think Steinberg was the first third-party company to support it. All right, so we have John Alpha Axard. This is John from Tanzania. Thanks for joining us. Been a while since we had someone from Tanzania live. We have Benny checking in from Sweden. Always wonderful to see Kerwin Young. He's checking in from Chapel Hill. All right, Papa Vol says, how can I add CC21 vibrato control to note expression? I can't see how to add it to the list of CCs in the inspector side panel. Okay, so let's say if we want to come over and we're doing some note expression. So let me just select the MIDI event. Okay, so let's say if we come over here. So I'm not sure if it's actual note expression that you want to do. Let me just... So say if we click here for our input, we'll say our MIDI. So let's say we want controller 21. Let's see if it shows up in here. Let me just see if I transmit a MIDI CC, if that will add it. Yeah, so you could just see here's our MIDI CC. Well, that's the input. Let's say if we want it to... So let me know if it's in this note expression area that you want to see it, or if you want to see it. Sometimes people use if you want to add the CC message here. So if you want to do that, we could, let's come over to our controller lane. And if we wanted to add, I think if we click on we could say set up available controllers. So once you click on the little triangle, and then you could add CC21 to the list here. So now if you wanted to draw in CC21, we can now do it here. So let me know if you want it as the MIDI CC, or if you need it in the note expression area directly here. So, but to do it as a CC lane, just click on the triangle, go to set up available controllers, scroll down, select the controller you want, click on add, and then it'll show up as an available controller within the MIDI key editor. All right, so you see Joseph Town says, have a problem with the scrub tool in the audio edit window, Cubase 15 Pro on Mac OS Sequoia. All right, so let's take a look. So it might have to be routed kind of through the control room. So let's say if I come over here, we have our play tool.
Well, even now, I'm so in love.
So if I want to come over and grab my scrub tool, we'll make this track larger, this event. So now, but you may have to activate the control room. So let's come over here. Let's get to my audio connections. I'll deactivate my control room. And let's see if the outputs I will set up for my audio interface I'm using for the live stream here. So it's working with or without the control room. So let me know, like, you know, if you're not using the control room, you may have to, you know, specify it as like the main outputs. So if you may have to click right here and right click on the outputs if you don't have that. So if I have that unchecked, that could cause it depending on your audio setup. But if you have the audio connections, try to, you know, add a monitor in the control room and route it through the monitor and see if that is kind of playing as expected for you there. But it seems to, if I go directly on, and if we zoom in, I can now just so let me know if that is helpful or what exact problem that you're having. All right, wonderful to see Tim Weinheimer from Mission Viejo, California. Thanks for joining us. Okay, sorry, my chat field just jumped. All right, so we see from Sonar, it says, mastering with WaveLab 13 Pro. I use limiter to raise the LUFS too much. I'm told that there's advanced techniques to raise the LUFS and not to use too much limiter. Too much limiter, give too small PSR, done using EQ, multiband comp, multiband limiting, even clipping, or an expander. The idea is to emphasize the transients, controlling the peak structure, and not to let the bass work into the compressor limiter. Greg, can you say something about that, or is it strange to you? You know, so sometimes when I see people do lots of mastering, I see, you know, a tremendous amount of people using plugins, and, you know, sometimes I see, oh, I'm going to run like this dynamics plugin just for this instrument. When I'm doing mastering, I'm going to run this dynamics plugin for another instrument and this, and now I want to raise everything. So it can often be that, you know, particular files, you know, are actually just kind of fighting each other. So let me just open up WaveLab 13. So, you know, one of the things that, or just in Cubase, you know, what I do, we'll just show it in WaveLab here. So let me just, Okay, so WaveLab, if you're not familiar, is kind of our mastering program. And just updated just last week. So let's say if I have a particular file here, so what I would probably do is, like, as you get a process, so let's say we want to adjust gain, so one of the things that is, clever about WaveLab, so let's say, if we want to actually adjust your loudness, so let's say you just have your mix, you could actually, once you go to the processing area, so let's say you have the process tab selected and you go to loudness, you could actually just come here and say, okay, I want this to be, let's say for streaming, it's often minus 14 LUFS, and then I could just say apply. And at that point, you could just simply adjust to the different LUFS levels if you wanted to have kind of targeted LUFS levels. So if you wanted to be at that. Now, one of the other things is if you come over here to analyze, there's going to be a loudness analysis. So once we kind of come over here, this would actually give you an idea of what the different loudness standards will be for YouTube and how you're kind of sitting versus Deezer versus Apple Music versus Netflix or Amazon Music or for Dolby Atmos. So you could actually get an idea of like what your true peak is, and okay, maybe I need to go down a little bit, maybe I need to go up. It could actually kind of give you those particular options. So on a mastering stage, maybe don't use as many plugins. If you're using like multiple compressors, I would try to, if unless you're like a real expert in making sure that those multiple compression or multiple plugin stages aren't kind of fighting each other and kind of doing adverse effects versus kind of what you intend to do. I would maybe try to limit the plugins and maybe just go to the process to loudness and see where that gets you in WaveLab. All right, just drag this down to my dock. All right, so we see Rick from Bratman Studio checking in from Uptown Whittier. He's rocking Cheerios for breakfast in the live stream. It says, hope you're happy and well and lost to jet lag from NAMM. Yeah, I was like perpetually jet lagged for 28 years of travel, so I'm usually pretty good with that. But thanks. Getting stuck in Indianapolis on the way home because of the storm. All right. Okay, so we see Beverly Beatty says that is fantastic. You answer my questions. Matter again, much appreciated. You're awesome. So thanks for great questions. That's what makes the live stream so good. Wonderful questions from attendees and users. All right, so we have James Quackenbush joining from Oneonta, New York. Thanks for being online with us today. Wonderful to see Michael Teams. I believe the virtual ice cream distribution will begin. All right. So we see from O Studio USA, Greg, is there a way to increase the size of the wave of a single track without affecting the volume? I know it can increase the size of all tracks at once, but I was hoping just to do one if needed. So in Cubase, it's going to be kind of a global setting. So like as we come over here, we have... if you hit Alt or Option plus G and H, we could zoom on the amplitude. So, and the intention is if you have kind of low level amplitude material, like sometimes people in broadcast and radio may have kind of very low level amplitude, that you could just simply boost the overall level. So it's going to be global because it wants to kind of, I think the design intention is that, if it was only for a single track, that particular single track, if this was boosted and this wasn't, it would give you kind of a false sense of like maybe a visual reference to the volume track. So here, when we want to zoom the amplitude of the waveform, it will be global and not on a track by track basis. So no way just to do it. And I think that would give you kind of a sense overall of how that, track is sitting. And you could always just, if you needed to do it while you're editing on one particular track, you could just use the Alt or Option plus H to zoom in, or Alt or Option plus G to zoom out as needed. All right, we see Randy Lee Music from Texas. Thanks for joining us today. Hope you're well. We see Brian Sawyer checking from Yuma, Arizona. So you see Craig Sibley says, wow, DAW project import export is awesome. Logic is apparently now supporting the format also. This will make my move from Logic to Cubase easy. Thank you. No, that's great. I think more companies support it. I think it's always great to have so many like standards so that people could switch to Cubase easier. All right, so we have Audi Lee sending winter greetings from Austria. Thanks for joining us. Just reading a book on Germany and Austrian culture. So enjoying it. Okay, so we see from Got Your, just says, I've been using the sampler tracks a lot lately. I have one concern. You see the samples in the pool, saved with the project, but what about the presets I created? Where are those stored? Okay, so let's just do a new project here. Okay, so let me just choose our folder. So I'll create a folder. We'll just put it on the desktop. We'll do new folder. Okay, so this is in our sampler track, February 6th delete folder. Now when I come over, we will see, all right, so when I have a sampler track, so let's say I come over here, we will say, okay, we'll right click and we'll add this to create sampler track. So right now this audio file is going to be in its location. So let's say now if we play back, okay, so we have our sampler track, and now let's look at our pool. So Control or Command plus the letter P or Media menu to pull. So we'll come over here, let's look, and we see that it's in this sampler track folder. Now this particular audio file, when we look at it, we can see the path is automatically going directly into the project folder. So if we have different audio files, now when we save the preset, so let's come over here and we'll see our track preset name. So I will click here and we'll save the track preset. And as we do this, so we'll call this February 6th sampler track. Okay, so when we come over to our media bay, if we want to find that, we'll go home. We'll go to user presets, to track presets, to sampler. And here we'll see our February 6th sampler track. So when we come over here, so now if I just drag and drop, we could create a new sampler track. So if I have no tracks there, we could delete all of these tracks. So I'll remove the selected tracks. I'll just double click. Now we have that same sample folder. Now where that is stored is going to be in the user presets, in the user settings. And to find that, we could just select the particular preset that you saved, right click, and you can say show in Explorer or reveal in Finder, and that will take you directly to that folder. and you could see exactly where that particular sample track is located. So you could just see it's going to be in the sampler track preset, and you can just come right over there and navigate directly to that particular folder for you. All right, so we see from Got Yours says, I would like to store the sound presets I made in a project folder for organized backups. So if you have an audio file, so let's say if and it could depend on when we come over here for your settings. So if you go to editing to audio, one of the settings that you could actually do is if you say on import audio files, copy all files to new project folder. So as they're automatically imported, we could see that the sampler track would automatically be within that particular folder. So again, if we come over here, we could look at the path of the samples. Now, if it's not in a particular folder, or if you've already done it on projects, all you'd have to do is come over to your media menu and you would see prepare archive. Then that would move all of the samples that are utilized in the project for the sampler track into the project folder for the particular audio file itself. And then when you back up the project folder, all of the samples used in that would be included within the same audio file folder for the project. So again, if it's not in the same folder, just come over to your media and choose prepare archive. All right, so we see Popavol, just with clarification, says I want a CC 121 and note expressions. You're trying to do, I know about the controller lane option, I want to add note expression option like aftertouch, etc. So I think there's a way to do it. Let me see if I could figure it out. I think I've done it before, but let me see. We've been just having my brain cramp moment. Okay, so maybe if we come here and we go to MIDI controller setup, now let's add CC1, CC21. All right, I'll just add CC22 as well. So now that we've done that, we can see that CC121 is selected here. So come over, let's see if I can remove that. So if we go to the choose function, let's get the MIDI controller set up. Let's say if I remove that, we don't see it anymore. Let's get to the choose functions, MIDI controller setup, go to 21, add, and then we can see that it becomes visible there. So just go to the choose function. Sorry for my brain cramp there. So, and then at the bottom, you'll see the MIDI control setup, and then you could add that as an option. So when you're doing note expression editing, we could choose to double click and go directly and have that as part of kind of doing MPE style editing. Let me make sure. So now when I come over here, we could now just have that draw in CC1, CC21 as well. So thanks for the clarification. And we see Beverly has received 1 gallon of chocolate supreme ice cream. All right, so we see from Clace, just says, hi Greg, I have UR 816. I've noticed that the UR 816 streaming left-right do not always work. Is it related to the number of used channels in the project? I open a small project with only 1 track, I get sound. So generally, like the live streaming, you know, if you're going to be doing that, how the driver, how the kind of the Yamaha Steinberg USB audio driver works. So if I come over to, like, let's say my device setup, at this point I would choose, like for my audio system, I would choose like my UR24C, so this would be like the UR816 DAW. And if I wanted to, let's say, capture audio from like from YouTube into Cubase, what I would do is just set my master on my computer system, my output here to the streaming. So we'll come over here and say, let's go to, so I'll say this is going to be my main streaming output. So I'm going to now add an audio track, and we'll say for its input, we want to do our streaming left-right stereo as our input. Sorry, let me just come over here. All right, so now if I want to, let's go to like YouTube here.
Hey everyone, Stephen Bedall here. Welcome back to this series where we explore Cubase plugins, old and new, in a practical, hands-on way, focusing on real-world production and mixing scenarios.
Right,
in this
so
video,
now
we're taking a look at Roomworks. This is one of several reverbs that's built into Cubase, and I think it's one that often gets overlooked. It's a very capable and versatile algorithmic
So now
reverb,
the streaming
and it features a very
input
simple and
is
intuitive
recording.
interface. So let me show you a few practical ways that I use Roomworks in my...
All right, so now when we go back and we play this, we can now just have this.
Very capable and versatile algorithmic reverb, and it features a very simple and intuitive...
So the streaming input is going to be more for capturing from an external source, or if you are on Zoom or Microsoft Teams, or other like OBS, you could just simply use that streaming input to take the audio from Cubase and set if you go to like OBS and set the streaming input, then your audio from your voice connected to the microphone plus your Cubase audio can all be routed internally to a separate driver for your streaming application like OBS. So let me know if that makes sense for you. All right, wonderful to see you, John Costigan, joining from Kenosha, Wisconsin. Hope you're well. Just speaking to a colleague who's in Wisconsin for the week, saying it's very, very cold. I think he might be up by Appleton. All right, we see Tim K joining from Zeist in the Netherlands. His cat Buddy is waving a paw hello to all the other pets nearby. He's happy to be online. We see Tiago from Brazil, who's now gotten 1 gallon of key lime pie ice cream. See, Uno Memento says hi from Finland, minus 23 degrees Celsius here. So he thinks spring is coming. Yeah, I was at minus 17 last week when I was in Columbus and Indianapolis Celsius. All right, so we see Tim K just wants everyone to give the thumbs up, and it says give the thumbs up, hand a free warm mitten. Happiness is only 1 click away. All right, you see Tony Trunzo joining from Australia. Thanks for being online. Chiluminaire saying hello from California. Great to see you on. All right, so we have a question from Got Yours. It says, every time I complete an export is completed and it goes back to the project screen, the status line that I usually have hidden turns on. Is there a way to make that stop doing it? Cubase 13 Mac. All right, so when we do, let's say, an export here, so let's say this is, just move these two events over. Okay, so when we do, I assume we're doing export audio mix down. So it says it goes back to the project screen status line. I usually have hidden. It turns on. Is there a way to make that stop doing that? Okay, so let's say if I come over here, I want to export. I'm going to choose to export, and we'll create an audio track. So let's say if I come here, let me just make sure my export range. So let's say we do our export audio mix down. So it says I usually have the status line that I usually have hidden turns on. So I'm not sure if this is the status line. So let's say if I just export the audio file, or if like that was the, so let me know exactly what you mean by the status line. That you usually have hidden, if that is like the, because I think it usually will show kind of the file as it's being exported, like an indication of the length of the export and how long it's going to take. So let me know if I'm misunderstanding. All right. Okay, we see Uno Momento's countered Michael Team's ice cream, his papaya pecan ice cream. Good flavor. So Uno Memento has countered with a pint of beer. Maybe a Lasac. All right, so we have a question. Hi, Greg. It still is that when I add an instrument to the track, it's not automatically selected. This occurred since 15 Pro. So I've reported that. Now, one quick, it could depend on how it's actually implemented. But let's say, one thing I found that may be even easier. So let's say, okay, if I wanted to have my Hallian Sonic, if I just drag it into the project, that would automatically add it and have that particular track selected as well. So if dragging over, like, so let's say if I come here to Groove Agent SE and I drag that in, that may not select the particular track, but I know that Steinberg is aware of it. It seems like it's doing it now, so they're aware of it, reported it. So I think we may see resolution coming, but try also just to drag it into, like, directly into the project window, and that I believe will have it selected for you as well. All right, so we see Ricky Tera just says, how to export stems / multiple tracks without full locators. I mean, let's say one track could just have one bar data, but the file size is 300 megabytes, etc., when the whole project might be 400 megabyte size, but stems are 5 gigabytes. So generally when you're creating stems, if we have, let's say our song is, going on, like this. And generally when we do an export audio mix down, at this point we could choose to, and this would make files that are equal length, so that, you know, this, in this case, if we were mixing down our song and we only had 2 measures of the file here, what we could choose to do is that would make an empty section before and an empty section afterwards. So that could increase your file size, but it also makes it hard for someone else to mess up. If you wanted to maintain the same file size, you could just come over here and just do a render in place. So let's say we go to the render settings. Instead of one event, you could just choose separate events. If you wanted to have the complete signal path, you could choose your folder where you want it to be rendered to. You probably would uncheck. You don't have to use a custom name. You could also mix down, uncheck that, and then that would export all of the files for you at the same length. But when you're doing kind of like a batch export, most people prefer, you know, just to have all of the files so that they could start at the same time, so that other people won't be able to make a mistake when importing it. But if you wanted to just maintain the original file sizes, you know, if you do just a render in place, and you could select all of the events in your project, MIDI and audio, render it in place, and choose in the render dialog to render them as separate events, then that would retain its timestamp position, and it won't add like silence before or afterwards. So you could try the render in place instead. All right, we see Tim K's impressed with his ice cream flavor selection. All right, we see Lawrence from Barn Door Recording from Rhode Island. Great to see you on. All right, so we have Jack. He says, hey, Greg from Munich. Thanks for joining us. Always wanted to get to Munich. All right, so we have from Chiluminaire, says, how can I get 2 instrument tracks to follow the chord tracks if follow chord track is grayed out? All right, so let's just do a new project here. All right, so let's just... All right, and let's add another instrument. Okay, so I want to just come over here. Let's get to chord pads, and I will add a chord track. Okay, so let's say okay, so we're going to use monitor tracks. just adjust the volume down here. So let me know if you want these to actually So if you want those to just kind of follow, so this way we could have those. So I'm just choosing this to choose monitor tracks, but let's say if I drag these chords over to these events, and then let me just transpose. I'll change the chords here. Okay, so now we have different chords here that we have now kind of updated. So these are playing kind of the old chords. We have our new chords defined here. Let me just... Okay, so these are playing the old chords. And we hear kind of that conflict. So if I want to now take these particular parts, I'll just glue this to make it a little easier. I'm going to select these two parts, and we're going to say, let's follow the chords. It says, do you want to follow directly? So I'll say, okay. And now, as we do that, so let's say, okay, so as we do this, we will say, follow the chords. So we'll come here. Then you may get like just a little message. Let's see if we have to do this again. But then you get the message where, you know, it's going to like follow the parts directly. So let's say, so we'll say follow chords. So that so you get a little message saying it's changing, but let me know if you don't see this as an option or if that's the chords are grayed out there. So if you could let me know if this is being grayed out, then we can take another look at it. All right, so Rick Ballantyne Music, great to see you on. Wonderful composer out of Charlotte. Everyone can check out his work. Says, hey Greg, I'm having trouble connecting to VST Connect, showing offline no matter what I do. Can you please do a quick reminder how to troubleshoot connection issues in the Pro version? All right, so when you're doing the Pro version, we'll just come over here. So we'll say, let's create a VST Connect. Okay, we'll come over. Okay, let me just change a Q channel, let it add one. So we can go to my audio connections, to my control room. Let me just remove Q4 so we could use that. So there were some changes that happened with this for kind of privacy concerns last year. So let's say, okay, we're going to create a VST Connect. So when we do this, we have our performer channel. So ideally what we want to do is when you click on the little share, you'll get a number. So when we go to your VST Connect performer application, so the person that you're recording will come over here. And when you see the, and this will be slightly different. So let's say if I go back here to my Cubase window, I would give this code to the person, and that person would enter it in here. So it used to be with your My Steinberg account. Now it's not utilizing the My Steinberg account. Sorry, I have bad lighting in my office now. And at that point, you know, just make sure that you're connected. And so if I'm here, I think I could just right click since I'm doing it on the same network. And then I can see that I'm connected. So as the engineer side of me, I can now come over here and adjust the audio interface for that person, and everything will be kind of synced up. So before it used to kind of search for people with a My Steinberg account. Now it's going to be just where you click and you'll see this little number, and you save that series of numbers to other people, and they enter that in, and then the two of you will be connected directly there. So let me know if that works for you, Rick, and reach out if you need more help, and we could do a quick test session if you need to. All right, so Wismo74. Hi, Greg. How can I record VST instrument arpeggio to get recorded arpeggio notes in piano roll? Thank you in advance. So it could really depend on the instrument. A lot of instruments don't necessarily record the arpeggio. So, but we can show you if you're using like the MIDI plugins. So let's say if I come here and I'm just going to turn off my VST Connect, get the latency down. All right, so if I'm here and we want to, so I'm going to use like the built-in MIDI insert plugin. So I'm going to select the particular track, and if we go to your MIDI inserts, here there's two different arpeggiators. So we're going to do like, let's say Apache SX. So now when I play my particular voice, we could have, so I just hold down a chord. So just to show you, let's say I open up my virtual keyboard. So now I'm just using that. Now, when we do this, and this is pretty solid, if you kind of hover over top, you'll see this little white line. What you want to do is to move that white line down. So when we do that, when the white line is up above, I could now, when I record MIDI information here into this particular track, well, right now I have it below. So when you, I'll just, for demonstration purposes, I'm going to move this above. Okay, so now when I record, and I just, it's recording just kind of my block chords I'm holding down. So we can see that kind of in the MIDI when we look at it. We see that we just have long notes, and these notes are being played through the arpeggiator. But if we wanted to record the actual arpeggiator in real time, what we need to do is just to come over here and move this white line. So again, hover over the MIDI inserts, drag it down, and anything that's above this line will get recorded. So if I want to come here, let's now record directly in. So I hold down the chord. I'm just using my computer keyboard. So now when we look at the part, the arpeggio that's been generated from the program, from this arpeggio, the Apache plugin, is now being recorded in real time as audio. So some instruments will allow you to do that, most won't. But if you're using kind of the Steinberg MIDI plugins for the arpeggio, you can just record the result of any of the MIDI plugins just by moving, again, that line down. So if you wanted to record 2 or 3 different MIDI plugins at once and capture the output, the result of those MIDI plugins to the MIDI recording itself, you can just simply come right over there and process it and record through the arpeggiator. All right. All right, so we see from Steve Green, says, "Hi Greg, is there a phone line plugin to replicate an old phone? If so, if not, can you show me how to set up a notch filter?" All right, so let's take a look. I think there's an EQ preset to do this. So let's say we'll go back to this project here. All right, so let's say I want to take the lead vocal here on this.
Do you recall the day we first met? That was a long, long time ago.
All right, so we'll go to the channel EQ. So there will be different presets. I think there's one that's kind of maybe AM radio or something. Okay, let's see if we can find it by name here. Yeah, there was one. Let me just take a look at it again. Phone line. All right, so come over here. So now
It was 7th grade in the school parking lot, waiting on our yellow coach to ferry us home. You looked my way and your heart
so if we
shone
bypass the EQ,
caught my breath while you called me to. Well, even now I'm so in love with you, just like a long, long time ago.
so look for the EQ preset called phone line.
Well, I remember the day that we wed. Seems like a long, long time ago.
So you bypass it, kind of full frequency
Our
range.
first kiss, there was no regret. Right after that Garth Brooks show, you told your daddy and he called my mom. Said you were too damn good for any boy that dumb.
So try that preset and you could tweak from there. But if you want to also just, if we want to use a different preset, so let's say if we come over here to if we wanted to do this, let me just, I'll load in our preset of, say reset. So, if you want to just come over, let's say you do your low cut, we could activate this. And if we kind of right click here, you could make that like 48 dB slope. We could do something similar for the high cut. So we could activate your high cut. So we'll make that 48 dB and we'll bring that down. So as soon as we turn it on.
His soured words are now dead and done. That was a long, long time ago.
So you can just do kind of like.
Now our two grown daughters are married with
And then if you wanted to go really extra vibe, if you go under distortion, you could go to kind of a classic plugin called the Grungelizer. Not that one. So if you get to the Grungelizer now, you could also just come over here, add noise. And you could have it 50 or 60 cycle, depending what continent you live on.
I still love you like the day that we met.
So you could also play around just kind of doing like the high cut and low cut filters right there and get great kind of sounding phone voices. But try the phone line preset. All right, Chiluminaire asks, what techniques can I use to smoothly blend guitar solo composed of multiple takes from different parts? Okay, let me see if I have this project. Okay, so let's say I have multiple parts that have been recorded, and I could do these multiple parts all in kind of one particular. So in this scenario, I took like the bass, and I did kind of one pass after another on the same track. Now, if we right click, you may have to, there's an area here called show lanes. So when I come, and I could just say, if you don't see the show lanes icon, right click and you could go to the track control settings, and then you'll see lane display type. If you see it over in the hidden controls, move it over to the visible controls. So now that I have all of my different, this will be take 1, take 2, take 3, take 4, 5, 6. So if I wanted to do a comp of multiple takes, we have this little hand tool, and this is the comp tool, so I could just select. Now if I want to select different parts of different takes, all you'd have to do is say, okay, right here I want to start, so let's say I like that, but I want to take, maybe start with this, and we can say, okay, at this point I want to listen to that take, so it's going to now transition to, and if I want to try different, I can say, okay, let's rewind just a little bit. So I could just kind of swipe over and select different takes and come up with like a really cool comp part for guitar solo, for so say maybe I didn't like that, let's listen to that transition, and we could adjust kind of these handles over if you need to. So as I would select kind of different parts, we can see that this would automatically get reflected in the top area. So if I close the lanes, and I could also just kind of click in the bottom here and select a different take. So you could select different takes by going to the bottom center of the event, or just open the lanes, and then you can see everything visually. And while you're listening to it, if you hold down the Control or Command key, you could listen to each of the takes. You could select a different one, but this will, when you use the comp tool, this will automatically allow you to select a particular range, and it will split and automatically mute all of the other ones all in kind of one motion. So it's a very elegant way of doing that. So try just opening up the multiple recordings as lanes, open it up and grab the hand tool, which is the comp tool, and just kind of swipe over the parts that you want in, and then you could close that. And if you wanted to, render that as a separate file, you could do that as well. So let me know if that's helpful for you. All right, so we see YPE Music says I opened an old project, but a VST was not recognized. I have the VST, but not the same version. Is there a way to retrieve it? So it could really depend. Some companies, Steinberg is really good about this. Like, if you had a project with Hallian 3 in it, for instance, and then you don't have Hallian 3 anymore, that the Hallian 3 project would automatically go and open up Hallian 7 and load up the correct sound. So some plugin developers are very conscious of that. Some plugin developers are not. So it's up to the plugin developer whether, if you have like the later version of the plugin, whether that automatically gets translated to the new version of the plugin, or if it's only going to work directly with that one particular version of the plugin. So if it's, the particular plugin is not automatically updating, you could try to reach out to that particular plugin developer. But it is a choice that the plugin developer makes. I think Native Instruments, I could be mistaken, I don't run a lot of Native Instruments plugins, but I think I hear a lot of complaints about this, like it's trying to open up an old version of Contact or something like that. This is a question we seem to get a lot, and it's just a conscious decision of the plugin developer that we can't really get around. All right, so all right, so we see Brian Sawyer's getting 1 pint of non-alcoholic Bitburger Pilsner to Michael Teams. All right, so we see from Craig Sibley, says, thanks, Craig. Jazzy and all involved got to run, but as always, great tips. You guys in Cubase rock. So thanks for joining us. Hope you're fully recovered from your anthrax. All right, Eddie on drums asks, I now have the full version of SpectraLayers. Now what can I do? So with the full version of SpectraLayers, you could do all sorts of great stuff, but to kind of use it, let's see if I have this one project. Yeah. All right, so first off, to work with SpectraLayers, so congratulations on your purchase. It's an amazing program. But what you could do is just simply select a track, and you'll see like it may say no extension or extensions, and then when you choose SpectraLayers, when you double click, on the file, now you are in SpectraLayers here. So we can now just come over here, and in this particular track, what I've done in advance is basically just kind of unmix the particular file. So let's say, and this is one of the many amazing things that SpectraLayers will do. So SpectraLayers, basically allows you, if we were to kind of look at it, we see kind of the audio waveform at the top. So, but this is almost like taking the audio waveform and kind of just rotating it, and we can see kind of the high frequency. So if we want to, and what we've done here is we just isolate it, like here's just the voice frequency, here's the drums. So we could isolate, and where we see our transients here, so the darker, that means there's more activity. And then we will see stuff like if we go to the bass, let's look at the bass part here. When we see, so these are lower frequencies and higher frequencies, but you could actually see what's interesting is when we see all these lines kind of just navigate up, these are kind of the harmonic overtone series. So now that I'm here, so let's say I had this 2-track mix and I was like, oh, what was I thinking when I mixed it? The drums are too loud, whatever. I can now take this particular file and say, okay, I want the drums louder. So even though it's just a 2-track mix, so let's say I wanted, so we could run it as an ARA extension. So, and now if I wanted to, I could just literally drag that file over like my vocal, and now my vocal is at an audio file right here. So if I wanted to say, okay, let's just add some effects on it. So I want to add more reverb to the vocal, even though this is all in the 2-track mix. So I could just go back and add. Or let's add delay. So we could kind of take these individual components . So, where it was just a 2-track mix, and I could take those individual parts out. But, one of the great things about SpectraLayers is that, you can, instead of doing editing on every frequency on the particular audio file, that we could choose to do edits on specific frequencies. So if you have like someone coughed or a squeaky piano pedal, you could just find those particular frequencies and kind of filter them out. So lots of great stuff that you could do with SpectraLayers. You just won a huge award with Sound on Sound for best music software. All right, so we see from Contrast Power 6302, is there a way to assign all pads to separate outputs in Groove Agent at once, or does it have to be done manually? All right, so let's take a look. So with Groove Agent, you're going to have two, maybe different depending on which type of kit you're in. So let's say if we come over here to our mixer, it might have to be, so it could be different. So let's say if I come over here, it looks like these, like I could select one output at a time. Let me just see if I could undock my Groove Agent mixer. So I think you might have to do it kind of at once. Now there is probably a little trick. I mean, you can save mixer presets with kind of the routing that's preserved. So, and especially if we come over, let's load up maybe like a beat agent kit. So, and then I think if we come over here that we could, so you could choose, once you have this set up, you could lock the outputs so that as you go on, the outputs would automatically be preserved. But I don't think that there's a way to kind of multiply select the outputs and change them. I'll try it in the beat agent as well. So let me just select all of these and see. If I hold down Option or Alt plus Shift, yeah, it's going to all go to the same. So it would have to be manually done, but once you have it saved, you could save that as a mixer preset, or just kind of lock the output assignments by clicking here, and then you could choose to lock the outputs. Sorry about that. All right, so we see from O Studio USA, so thank you, Greg, for answering my question. Have a blessed weekend. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Looking forward. And there's a lot of people in the U.S. watching the Super Bowl this weekend. It's a big deal in the U.S. and I think elsewhere. All right, so we see wonderful Seesaw Sound Official on. All right, so we see Papa Vol says, is it possible to reset all of the quick control assignments and pages shown at the top of each VST instrument? Sometimes I customize the set and would like to reset it back to normal set. Hope that makes sense. All right, so yeah, let's come over here. So let's say if we have, just add, here I'll just, on this, let's go to a particular track. So whether it's an EQ or an effect plugin or an instrument, I think this would be the same. So let's say, okay, so if when you go to a plugin, whether it's an instrument or an effect plugin, you'll see this QC. So once we come over here, so we could choose to get the default from the plugin. Let's see if we could save this as a preset. All right, so let's say I'll just kind of change this. Okay, so now once I have that, so if, let me just come over, and there's also, let's get to the remote control editor and see if these are presets. All right, so this would be basically where we could assign all of the different presets for that particular plugins. If you have more than 8 parameters, you can map it to different pages. So you could always revert back to the all right, so we have kind of the standard layout. If you do kind of play around with it, so I don't think that there are kind of presets. I mean, you could have different mapping pages. So when you come over here within the MIDI remote, you could choose to go to the remote control editor and switch between different mapping pages for a plugin. For the currently active plugin, so you can get to different areas. If you do change it and want to go back, all you'd have to do is say, so we changed this one, and let's say we change these two. If you click right here, we can just say get default quick controls from the instrument, and that would automatically take you back, but it doesn't seem. But let's see if we come over here. Let's say if we go to the quick controls for the channel, if we could, we may be able to save it here actually. So let's say if I come here, let's go to insert 1. So we'll come over here. So let's get to the amp. So let's say our amp model. We want to come over here. Let's go to insert 1 to, let's say, the bass. So we could have these, and once we come over here, if we click on the quick controls here, we go to presets, and you could save a preset, and so you could just come right over here for the channel presets. So, and now I can say, okay, this is for amps, and when I right click, we could go to presets here and just choose our volume pan for the channel. Right click, let's get to the presets, and let's get to the bass amp. So those are the ones I set. So you could have like your standard quick controls and say presets from the inspector as well. All right. All right, wonderful to see George on. It says it was 63 degrees Fahrenheit near Seattle yesterday. It says his kids will happy trade any of you. All right. All right, Chiluminaire says, hi, Greg. How can I map specific keys on a MIDI controller? Example, C4 to play C minor 7, F4 to play F minor 7 to trigger a custom chord progression. Okay, so let's say if I want to come over here, let's just grab quick instrument. Okay. Okay, so let's say we have that. All right, so we have chord pads. So if I come over here, I can say, okay, let's go to our chord pads. So let's say, okay, I want this to be, I'll just look at the chord assignments. So we want C4. So let's say I want this note here. So I think if we go to okay, so we could come over here and say we want the player remote control. Right, so I think we want this to. Okay, so pads remote control range starts. I'm going to set this to C4. All right, so now. All right, so now I'm having my C4 is triggering that chord. So let's say you want C4 to trigger a C minor 7th. So I'll just come over here. Or if you wanted to make it a dominant 7th. Okay, and let's go to F4 to play F minor 7th. So I come over here, let's make this. So again, coming over here to kind of the chord pad setup, you want to set the pad's remote start range, and then that will allow you to trigger and then even if you wanted to go through different arpeggiators, you could choose different patterns. So you can say, okay, let's come over here, let's do an epic piano ballad. So now when I play, and you could drag your own patterns over. So say we get an F minor. So that's how you could do it. So you set the chord pads, go here to the setup for the chord pad, set the remote range, and then you should be kind of all set right there. So I'll just set it back to where it was. So let me know if that's helpful for you. All right, so Randy Lee Music is requesting banana cream ice cream or Chicago dog flavor. All right, so you see if we got yours. It says on Project Arranger screen, there are things you can hide. Left tab, info line, status line. On a laptop screen, space is limited, so I hide info and status line every time I hit save and export. Same status line comes back. It's a pain to turn off after I hit save every 5 minutes. So, one thing that, if screen real estate is really, kind of the issue for you. So let's say if we come over here to our chord, we'll add an arranger track. All right, and we open it up. So if screen real estate is really, like I'm running 1920 by 1080 and not every screen, especially on laptops, it could be limited. So if you can't adjust your particular screen, if it's like just a screen resolution, and sometimes laptops you're going to have fixed screen resolution. If you come over here to your settings and let's say you go to user interface, or there's event display, let me just see if it's under. Where did it was moved recently. So it used to be under If you're in Windows on 14 and earlier, it's going to be under General. So this is under. But you can adjust. Let me just. Thought it was under. But it is kind of user adjustable. Let me just. Oh, I think I'm actually in Cubase 14. Okay, let me go to Cubase 15. Sorry about that. That's why I'm not seeing it. Started the wrong Cubase version. Okay. Okay, so if you're at the point where you're not able to see, so if you're on Windows in previous versions, you could go to General, but if you go to your settings here, to user interface, you could do the application scaling. So you could say, okay, I want it to be, minus 50%. So if you want stuff to be much smaller, you could come over here and adjust the application scaling so that you could see like more information, so that way the program actually scales instead of relying on the operating system to do it. So try, if you're in 15, just go to user interface settings. So you could do it in 14 if you go to General, and you'll see under the high DPI area, but on 15 you would just see user interface, and then so you may have your user interface that looks something along the lines of this, or maybe worse. So so when you go to like the particular arranger track that you are kind of fighting just for screen real estate. So again, settings, user interface, and then you could adjust your screen resolution so you could see more information. So I think that would fix the problem for you overall. All right, Barden Heldens asks, hi Greg, is there a way to key tracking EQ? So if you have the particular EQ on, let's say it's not necessarily going to track the EQ, frequencies aren't going to necessarily follow, but let's say you know that you're in a key of, let's say B flat, or let's say we're in a key of G. I could come over here to my EQ frequency. So let's say I just kind of come over here and I see my frequency listed here. I could just say, let's go to G4. And then I could actually EQ based upon the actual pitch, kind of maybe the tonal center of the piece. So if you're, sometimes I see lots of audio engineers that maybe aren't as musically oriented, and they may just always EQ the same frequencies, but the frequencies are obviously dependent upon the key of the song. So, I think a lot of times when you're actually EQing directly to a known pitch center, that it makes a lot of sense, but it won't necessarily switch that EQ when it's going from a G chord to a D major, but often if you set it for the root key, that would kind of help dial in the EQ frequencies that make a lot more sense musically for your suggestion. So in the frequency, again, you could just type in MIDI note names. You say, okay, let's go to G3, and that would move the center of that pitch based upon the tonality of the music that you're mixing. But it's not going to follow it like a chord track. Great. Sorry, my chat field jumped on me. Let me find my spot. All right. All right, so Gerald Ely says, question, what are and how would I use sound slots in the expression map? Okay. So let's say, and we could think of those as being basically for the different articulations. So I'm going to add an instrument here. Let's go to, all right, so let's say Hallian Sonic. All right, so let me come over here and just say, okay, so let's say we go to Iconica. Okay, so we come over here to our basses. All right, so I could have the basses play kind of, staccato or pizzicato or marcato, sustain, or if we want to do tremolo. So these are kind of like different sound slots that we could have. So when we go to like an expression map, what we could do now is just come over, and because it is Hallian based, I will just double click here. Let's go to our expression map, click on the plus, and we'll just say basses, and this is automatically created and extracted the key maps for us here. It's part of VST3. So when we want to come over, we could just say, let's go to, we'll say, let's go to our expressions. So we'll go to the articulations here. So when we're working with this, we want to switch notes between, so let's come over here. We'll just draw in a couple of notes. I'll just do a quick step entry. Okay, so we have a bunch of notes. So when I want to actually, come over here, we could just say, okay, I want these notes to be staccato. And we could have these kind of organized in folders so that if you have lots of different articulations, you can manage those effectively. So you can say these notes now I want to be pizzicato. I want these to be staccato. And let's say legato for this, back to pizz, back to legato. So now as we play, that we could actually just kind of switch between our different articulations for us right there. So as we work, we could actually kind of see within the editor all of the available articulations, but I don't necessarily have to have like 400 vertical lines, I could just come over here and kind of tuck them away and still see what the available articulation is right there. So we can think of the slots as being for basically each of the different available articulations. All right, so we see from YPE Music says dragging it into the project instead of dragging it to the track section worked. Thanks, minor annoyance, but I like smooth workflow. Understand. And as soon as it came out, I reported it to Steinberg, so they're aware of it. But actually, it's a little faster just dragging it to the project window for most time. All right, so Gerald Ely has received 1 gallon of chocolate eclair ice cream. See, Virtual Alan says, hi, Greg, your memory is amazing. Yes, I'm from Scotland. Can you tell me if a rotary encoder on a MIDI remote can move the scrub function forward and back? So most of the time, rotary encoders, some encoders do it, but to do scrub forward or scrub back, the encoder needs to transmit a MIDI CC message. So we'll just show you here. So a lot of times when we go to, let's say, a MIDI remote device, and I have like my Chord Nano control here. So when I adjust this, this is only transmitting 1 MIDI CC message. So if this controller would transmit 1 MIDI CC message when I move it to the left or to the right, and a different CC message when I move it to the left or counterclockwise. So if I move it clockwise, if it transmitted a different CC message than when it did it counterclockwise, would be a different unique, because each MIDI CC is going to be tied to a particular control. So when you do that, most rotary encoders don't do that. Sometimes some controllers, like the expensive ones, when you have like a really expensive feeling jog shuttle wheel, that will transmit multiple MIDI CC messages to do that. But a lot of times, like the vast majority of MIDI encoders only transmit the MIDI CC message in incrementing and decrementing, but not necessarily independent MIDI CC messages based on a direction. And that's what you would need to do for the MIDI remote to work for like a jog scrub wheel. All right. See, Matt Elston's liking his ice cream flavor. All right, you see Jazz Dude has some new templates with chord tracks, running a lot of instruments in Howie and Sonic 7. Check those out on the Discord. All right, so we see from Synthen, G3D says, hi Greg, have a blessed day ahead, participating in your weekly streams regardless, so we're glad you can make it today. So we see a comment from Rick Ballantyne says, so I will show offline until the performer gets the code. Is that correct? That is correct. So once you get that code and the performer enters the code, then you should just be linked in together. All right, so we see Chiluminaire says, when working with audio hit points, how do you enable the timing quantize flag? What does it control? And how is it different from quantize strength? Okay, so let's say, let me just open up a different project here. Sorry for having Cubase 14 open for so long. Okay, so let's say I have a, let me find something that's a little more swing in it so we can show something a little more obvious. Okay, so say we have this particular file here. All right, so when we're quantizing audio, let me just clear my throat. All right, so let's say we'll have this snap. Okay, so, when we are quantizing, so it says when we work on audio hit points, how do you enable the timing quantize flag? So a lot of times you don't even have to. So let's say we look at this particular field, this loop here. All right, so if we open up the quantize panel, now, Cubase will always determine hit points in the background for us. So at this point, I'll say, let's quantize this maybe to 16th notes. All right, so we hear like a little bit of a swing factor there. So I'm going to do just straight 16th notes. And we look at the audio waveform. So I haven't gone in and adjusted hit points. I haven't manually added it, because those hit points are automatically detected. So now we want to make sure that the audio warp quantize is checked. And then when I apply the quantize, and we'll open this in the sample editor as well, so we could see our data just kind of move around slightly. So now I do that. So we undo that. So now we can say we apply the quantize, and now it's going to be. So let's say we undo that quantize. And let's add more swing feel to it. So let's say I want to put maybe like an 80% swing. So you could just, so we go back to where we were. We could just say, okay, now we're just doing, let's say, 8th notes, and we'll do. So you could just kind of change the feel, but we didn't really have to go in and manually add hit points, because those hit points are automatically added when the file is imported into Cubase, or when you record the file. There's automatic hit point detection, so you could just select it and go to your quantize panel, make sure that the audio warp quantize is enabled, and then that's all you have to do. So let me know if that makes sense for you. All right, so we see Secret Studios. Jay says, I hate typing comments from my phone. There's probably like a little microphone. You could probably just talk into it, maybe. But yeah, I don't like typing long emails on my phone. All right, so we see Wismo74 says, great, thanks. That's what I needed. Thank you, Craig. So you're welcome. All right, YPE Music, can I make my own chord pad? Yep, so once you come over here to the chord pads, you can just say, okay, I want to come right over here. So I want this to be an F sharp suspended for 9th chord with an E flat in the bass. So whatever kind of chord progression that you want, you could also just click on like the MIDI icon here. And if you wanted to, just kind of play in particular chords, that you could have like MIDI enabled as well, and just kind of play a particular chord if you wanted to as well. So all right, a second. All right, so let me go to the next question. All right, so we see from Ezra Isu123, show me how to screen record Cubase with audio properly, Cubase 14 Pro Windows. I don't have a sound card. So what I would do if I was on the Windows platform, I didn't have a sound card, is I would download MixKey, which is currently free at Steinberg. So come over here, and this is kind of like an audio streaming utility that's really slick. So once you open this up, you could basically say, okay, I want to have like Cubase, my Cubase audio stream. And then, so basically you could feed like your Cubase audio into this as a source, download OBS, which is a freeware program. So if you get like open broadcast, like I think it's open broadcast software, it'll look like this. I'm using OBS currently, so this is what I use for my live streams. And then the audio input, you could do screen recording or streaming directly from here. So you could just click on start recording. And in your audio input section here, you would just choose your Steinberg mix key. So once you have mix key configured there, then you should be good to go. So try mix key and OBS, and then you could just do your screen recording right there. All right. All right, and we see kind of a further clarification on, or further question on that. It says audio output or control room according to your experience. So as long as you have, it doesn't matter, as long as Cubase is outputting the audio, then mix key could pick it up and route that into OBS. Okay, Steve Green asks, hi Greg, in my mix all levels are set okay, just the bass is quiet even though it's at max on the mix desk in Cubase. Is there a way of boosting a signal? I tried normalize, but the signal is okay. So one thing to do is maybe bring all the other tracks down if that's not a real viable option. Another approach maybe just to come over here. So I'll just show you another example. Okay, so if we look at, like, so let's say I have my bass track here. And you still need more gain overall. If you kind of click and you open up like the channel EQ, there is a pre-section and there is a gain that you could adjust here before the channel hits any of the processing. So you can get another 48.2 dB of gain right there in the pre-section. So it's very clean gain, no extra noise. So you could try to just increase that. It won't affect any of your automation. It just kind of is bringing more signal into the channel before it hits the fader, before it hits the inserts and EQs, channel strips and effect sends. So, and you could also, if you go right here, you could go to the pre-section and then you'd see the gain that could be adjusted directly there as well. So try that, and I think that will make a lot of sense for your workflow. Okay, so we have a question from Chiluminaire who asks, how to record a guitar solo with multiple takes at bar 2 but listen to bar 1 as a lead-in? Thanks. Okay, so let's say I want to do like 4 bars of a, so I'm going to come over here. Let's say we want to do 4 bars. So I'm going to put my cycle locators here around 5 bars. So let's say I want measure 16 as kind of like a lead in, and then we want to start recording at measure 17, and we want to record from 17 through 20. We want it to play afterward, we want it to play before, because maybe we're hanging a note a little bit over. So this is when if we go to your transport menu, we could utilize something called punch points. All right, so I'm going to come over here and I'm going to say, okay, measure 17 through 20. I'm going to just say, we go to your transport menu to punch points, and we say, set punch in points to the selection range. So now I'm going to come and roll my cycle marker here from, let's say, measure 16. All right, so I want to record, let's say, on my bass track. So I'm going to select my bass track, and we're going to activate punch in and punch out. So if it's not on, you can see just to the left of the transport, we have I and O if you hit those on your keyboard. So now while it's going to cycle measure 16 through 21, it's only going to punch in on measure 17 through 20. So as we watch, so punch in. Let me set an input for the track. It would probably help. All right. So now we do the punch in. That's going to punch out at 20. Now it's going to cycle back. We have our one measure count in, punch in. Punch out. So one more time. So it used to be that the punch in, punch out points were always kind of coupled directly to the left and right locators, but now we could have those set independently using the punch points. So again, you can just come right over here to your transport menu. You could activate punch in, punch out, and you could select a range and just set the punch in and punch out points and move the particular like the loop range independently of that. And then you could have, again, different punch in loop than the actual playback loop. So let me know if that's helpful for you, Luminaire. All right, so we have Jay from Secret Sound Studios says, hi Greg, I'm curious about the new CC1 controller. Could you please explain which of the controls are variable and whether it comes with software templates for Nuendo, Cubase, etc.? So it does come with software for Nuendo and Cubase. So, you know, it's basically similar to like the transport functions of the CC121. It's a single fader device. Instead of the 12 rotary encoders that are found on the CC121, you have 4 endless rotary controllers that are that you can push down as well to activate functions. And you have 12 buttons that function like a stream deck. So you could actually kind of hit a function and then move the encoder. Below that, you also have your standard, you know, mute, solo, next track, read and write automation, you know, your transport control. You have a kind of a large rotary encoder, so you could use that for jog scrub as an AI knob or as a lock. So I should have mine coming. So maybe on Tuesday's live stream, maybe fingers crossed, I'll have it kind of all up and running. It's kind of en route to me now, so I could play around with it. Okay, so we see from Rick Ballantyne says, hey Greg, test and connect with performer. Thanks for your help. So you're welcome. Have a good session. Michael Teams granted Jay 1 gallon of chocolate chip ice cream. All right, Gerald Ely wants people to not forget to hit the like button. All right, we have Stephen Mike says, I'm late, but I'm here. What's up? So thanks for joining us. All right, sorry, Chatfield jumped. Okay, so we see Rick from Bratman Studios says, Greg, I'm playing around playing my Roland TD-15 via MIDI to USB powered cable and notice that different patches respond differently to the drums in Groove Agent 5. Sometimes the snare roll is smooth, sometimes not. Could that be because of layers or so, you know, So I'm not sure like what it's transmitting, but when you're doing that inside a Groove agent, you know, when you come over, there's going to be always make sure, let me just resize that. So like when you're in the player mode, you know, you could but you'll have kind of different presets. Let me just, yeah, so or whether when you're in a kit mode, if you click here, then you could, you know, just choose like, you know, you're rolling TD series and realize that sometimes changing the preset on your rolling electronic drums may change the mapping. So this may be kind of the default mapping. If you get into more complex kits with more articulations for, you know, different snare flams and, you know, doing all of the hi-hats, some of those may kind of go outside of, you know, the typical default mode for the MIDI notes that are being transmitted. So, but make sure you have this set up. So when you go to the kit and you click here like on the hardware controller mapping, and then you'll see additional configurations for different controller, different electronic drum kits, including the TD series. All right, so we see Jack says, "Hi Greg, can you explain how the chord track automatically derives a scale from the chords? I'd like to set a different scale from the one shown in the bottom left of the chord track." So it kind of is doing an analysis of it, and sometimes chords and scales can be incredibly, you know, people can argue, you know, like these four notes, you know, is it a D minor 7 or is it an F major chord with a D and a bass? So there's lots of interpretation for different chord symbols and progressions. So let's come over, just find the project I was thinking of. Did this work? Okay, so but if you want to change the particular chord, so let's say I just drag this up and we determine the chords. All right, so once we're in our chord track, so like this one I think is pretty obviously like in G major. Okay, so now when we come over here, if we see the automatic scales, so when we select the chord track, we'll have the choice for automatic scales. Let's say I want to put this as E minor instead, like the relative minor. We could just come over and just change that particular scale directly there. So make sure when you select the chord track that you don't have automatic scales checked. So if you want to change what it comes up with by default, just come over here to automatic scales, uncheck that, and then you could just double click there and change accordingly to what you want it to be or what you think it should be. Wonderful to see David M. checking in from Liverpool. See, David M. is watching Young Sheldon with his wife. So my son liked that show a lot. So. All right, so we see ms.rebel says, "Hi Greg, I'm having trouble trying to get a sample to match the tempo and be on beat with the metronome. Can you show me? All right, so let's do a new project here. So the samples often will have samples, if you're purchasing them separately, like, commercially, they often have tempo metadata in them. So when we come over, let's say we go through different loops here. So let's say, okay, we go through. All right, so let's say I drop that in. All right, so if it has metadata on it, a lot of times if you come over and you so right now, events can be in musical mode or not in musical mode. So if I want this to fit the grid, if there is like a tempo that's in the file, the first thing I would do is just come over here. So let's say if I turn on my metronome, so that's not lining up, and we can see that this is like 2 and 1 beat, so 9 beats, and I want this to fit into 8. So often what you could do is, if there is metadata in the file, what you could do is select this and then just come over here and put it into musical mode. And now, so that will automatically be put into music file. Now, if you don't know what the tempo of the file is, what you could do is just double click, and if we go into the definition, we could count how many beats this is. So when we listen to our file, so I'll take it out of musical mode. All right, so we don't know what the tempo is. The tempo isn't part of the name. Often you'll see the tempo in the name, so it's like 106 beats per minute. So I'm going to count how many beats there are. So I'm going to say 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4. All right, so we have 8 beats. So when I double click and I go into the sample editor, we could go into our definition and we could say, 1, it's going to be 2 bars long. So if I'm in 4/4, then we can say that this is in 2 bars. So I'm going to just now come over here and put that into musical mode. And now that we know that that's 2 bars, it's calculated the tempo for us. And now I could just click on musical mode directly from the sample editor. It's the same as clicking on musical mode here. And that's going to automatically follow the tempo. So if I copy this pattern, this drum loop a couple of times, I open a tempo track. And so I could come over here and say, okay, as I just change my tempo, as it slows down, the loop will automatically speed up and slow down to match the tempo. So one is just select a file and see if musical mode will fix it. If that doesn't do it, double click, go into the sample editor. You'll see the definition tab, count how many bars it is. So this is, you listen to it, you can kind of count it out. So there's maybe 2 bars and there's 4 beats per bar. If it's in 3/4, if this was in 3/4 where it's like boom, bam, bam, boom, bam, bam, and it was 9 beats, I would say, okay, that's 3 bars of 3/4. And then that would automatically figure out what the tempo is and be able to automatically make that fit directly into your project. All right. Art Daily Analytics asks, can you explain your setup to broadcast to your channel, VST Live Pro, VST Connect? So what I do is I have an audio interface, and this is just something I've had set up for like 6 or 7 years. I could modify it now with like mix key, but what I do, because often I have to change sample rates in a session, so I have an audio interface that I use for Cubase. So I'm going to come over here and I'm using the Steinberg UR24C. So I use that as my audio interface. That is going the analog outputs of that are going into a Yamaha mixer, so it's a Yamaha AG08. There's also Yamaha just released new mixers at the NAMM show, so an MGX series and also new URX series, which are kind of really great for streaming capabilities. So I take the analog outs of the audio interface into the mixer. My microphone goes into the mixer. That enables me, if I have to cough or clear my throat, so I can hit it, just move my finger and mute the channel, so you guys don't have to listen to me cough over 4 hours or clear my throat. And then inside of OBS, I am using the audio from the Yamaha AG08. So that way I could switch. So one audio interface is set up for the streams, the AG08 mixer, and one audio interface is being used by Cubase, so I could switch sample rates and not have any worries about it at all. All right. Thanks for all the great questions from everyone. All right, got yours. Is saying, is it possible to make a project logical preset to open all plugin inserts on a mixer channel? So make it do the function I do now of holding down Shift Option and edit channel with cursor. All right, so let's see if we could do that. So let me just add effect. Like I'll just come over here. Let's do like track preset. All right, let's quit that Cubase 14, sorry. Okay, so I'll just come over here to quick track preset. Okay, so we got a couple of inserts there, so let's see if we could we might be able to just do it with a macro. So let me see if I could just create a macro to open up all of them. So I can come over here to my key commands. Okay. All right, so let's see if this works. So I have this particular track. We just come over here. Let's run the macro. So yeah, it looks like you could just make a macro to do that. So let's say now if I want to come here to macro, so it's open, like we call it open close inserts. But now what we could do is just come and that macro again, so you don't have to do it with the project logical editor. If you go to your key commands, and I'll just say, call this open. So if you go to mixer, insert one open close editor for selected channel. So as soon as, and if I wanted to assign that to a function on my hardware controller, I could just say, let's come over to my MIDI remote. I will say, let's make this button. Come over to key commands and we'll say macros. And we'll say open inserts. So now I could just select this particular track and open and close all the inserts on that particular track. Just like that. So once again, go to your key commands, make a macro, and then you could open, close, and just add, and you'll find this under the mixer section where the key commands are open, close, editor for, for selected channel track. So that one command can toggle and open and close all of the plugins for a particular track. So if I have different plugins here, we can just come over to the inserts. So I go to this track, hit the button, go to this track, hit the button. So give that a try. Fairly easy macro to make. So we see Ghost Beyond. Hi, Greg. Is there an official Steinberg guide or tutorial for transitioning from Windows to Mac? Really, it's, operationally, Cubase is the same. That really the only difference is on the Mac OS, you're going to have a Cubase menu, and that's where you get to the settings, which on the Windows platform is preferences. You have audio settings and key commands in a Cubase menu, so that's pretty typical for Mac OS applications. Make sure that you have your right mouse button configured in your Mac OS, but, Cubase runs really identically. There's really the only change that you would run into is going to be just, like operating system stuff. And there's probably tutorials with that, but the Cubase functionality is really, besides like a couple of like 3 or 4 items in a different menu, is really going to be identical experience. So I don't think you'll have any problems kind of transitioning. So there isn't like an official one because the program is really the same, on either platform. You see Jazz Dude posting a link to Steinberg's mix key. Thanks for doing that, Jazz Dude. Appreciate it. All right, so we see from Sabertooth Bicycle says that was really effing cool, that punch in, punch out within the loop range independently thing. Another question I didn't know I had until somebody had asked it for me. I think that's the great thing about this format, is that people learn from other people's questions. So you see David M says, wow, that punch in out tip is so useful. All right, so we see from Soul Sound Official, hi Greg, question, what is the right voltage to have for the samples like kick and bass, etc., that comes at 0 dB full scale, minus 18 RMS, sounded quiet, thanks. It's really, I think it's always going to be, different for every song. I tend to shy away, it's like, what's the best EQ frequency for the kick drum in general? And, while there's obviously a range within a kick drum, I think I always try to approach every project, being unique. It's really easy. And it goes back to, before, DAWs and computers were used. I remember being in the studio and it's just like, oh, we always put the API EQ on bass. Why? It's just, oh, we always do. It's just, every time there's a kick drum or a bass, we put this API, the little graphic, was it the 550 or 560? I don't remember which model number. But people would always use kind of the same things. So there's kind of tried and true methods. But, I always try to make each project, I try to approach it differently and approach it with a fresh perspective. So, having an answer, for something like that's always hard. But, minus 18 would probably be sought for a kick drum if you were doing EDM music, if you were doing Americana with, violin and, 3 acoustic guitars, mandolin, and 4 harmony singers. Minus 18 might be great for that scenario. So it really kind of depends on what music you're doing as well. All right. So we have Rob WJ says, hello, thanks for streams. Nice to be here. Says, Innuendo 14, I have Groove Agent instrument and multi-outputs activated. It looks like I can't use FX sends on the individual outputs. I can add a send, but it's grayed out and can't be activated. Is this a bug or do I miss something? All right, so we'll take a look. So the routing can be different if you're in Groove Agent, like Beat Agent, or if you are in so I'll just add 2. All right, so let's do just a Beat Agent kit. So there's Beat Agent and Acoustic Agent. So let's say if I just come over here and I'm playing a pattern. All right, so let's say now I want to come over here to this kit. All right, so I want this to have reverb on it. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to route it to my plugin output 3. So when we do that, we can see that we go to the mixer, that I have the clap on its own output and I have my kick going here. So now that this is in my mixer, I could just come over here and say, okay, let's add an effects track. So I want to add a reverb. And let's put a delay on it. So we don't hear that on the kick. So if you don't see it initially, it could be like when you have your Groove Agent kit here. If you open this up, you can see that the clap, when we select here, then we could adjust, our send. But that's completely isolated. But you'll see it in the mixer. But if you don't see it on the project window, then you could just see it in the mixer. So this is our separate output. So, and if I wanted to hear everything that's going on, we'll unsolo everything. So the only thing that's feeding the delay and reverb is that clap. So we come over here. Now let's say we want to do now let's say we want to do a different groove agent that is a acoustic agent kit. It'll be similar concepts, but how we route to the different output will be different. So we'll come over, let's get to Studio Kit. All right. So here we would do it, you know, from the mixer. So if I want to take my snare, I can say let's send a snare out of output 3. And again, I see output 3 when I come here. We open it up. I can see my snare hit. And now let's say my snare is here. And now, you know, when we come over here, we could just so we could still kind of route it directly out and be able to process all of the individual outputs separately. So let me know if that makes sense. It seems like it's working as expected. All right, so we see K Jack says thanks, Greg. So you're welcome. And Soren's offering to help Rick Valentine out. All right, Papa Vol asks, how can you enharmonically change a note chord, example E flat 7 to D sharp 7? Okay, so let's add a chord track. So we go to E flat 7. Okay, so let's say I'm here, and I think we do the enharmonic shift. I could just switch it here to sharp, and then it's set to D sharp 7. And if we want it to be enharmonically, so we just come right over here in the info line. So we go back and forth. Let me just change the font on my chords there. Give me just a second. All right. So again, select chord, enharmonic shift from the info line, and then you can just go from there. All right, so David Adams says, hi Greg, you missed my question about WaveLab, so sorry about that. Says, just updated WaveLab, not checked it yet. Can you suggest 2 new updates to look at? So with WaveLab, you know, I haven't gone through because I just kind of got back from NAMM and had another show and have another show next week. So I'm still kind of digging into WaveLab 13. Obviously, the big thing is going to be Dolby Atmos mastering. So if you're doing more like surround applications, you know, that is going to be like super helpful. So, you know, and where it's like really good if you're doing immersive work, you know, it's like, okay, I want to put a plug in and you have like, you know, 11 objects and, you know, or 12 objects and, you know, let's say 12 tracks into bed and, you know, 30 objects that you could apply the processing I think some of the other new stuff that it's going to come with, let me just open up, some of the plugins that are with it now. Some of the plugins that we saw introduced in 15 as well. So dynamics. So now you're going to have the Ultra Shaper, which is like a really wonderful plugin. If you do sound design work, you could also play around with like the pitch shifter, I think is included as well. Let me just make sure. Yeah. So if you come over here, so those are like great plugins, but check out, I could probably have a better answer like when I get back from doing another trade show next week. I'm speaking at Texas Music Educators in San Antonio. And then I have some time to kind of dig into WaveLab 13 at a more granular level. But, the big thing is a big hit at NAMM, Michael Romanowski, who just won a Grammy this year again, his 6th Grammy for immersive projects. He was kind of showing off WaveLab 13. So lots of great stuff in there. All right. All right, great to see Balsa checking in from Montenegro. All right, you see GNick88. Wonder if that's Grant Nicholas from Baltimore. All right, Balsa asks, hi Greg, do you have any experience with a Cubase effect named mixer delay, and what's it useful for? So a lot of times the mixer delay plugin is going to be used for kind of surround sound purposes, especially when going from like down mixing from like, surround to like a stereo. So if we come over here, often it's going to be kind of in the surround. So as you come here, you could have like, depending on this, if you're on like a 5.1 track, that you could adjust the timing between different delays for kind of like fold down purposes and say, okay, now I want to listen to my mix in stereo or mono or 5.1. So it's often used for that. All right, wonderful to see Val checking in from Vienna. Says he's hardly working this weekend, or he's working hard. Hopes to catch up next week about NAMM and news. It says, I got some great questions next week. All right. Got yours, says Greg. Thanks for all your help today. Appreciate it. All right. So we see Michael Pierce on as the Button Man. Still getting used to everyone's new names and monikers. And he's received 1 gallon of peach mango ice cream. All right. All right, so we see JVI on. Says he has guests, so he's going to be watching tomorrow. Wants to say hi to everyone. And just thank me for the hangouts. So thanks for being a loyal attendee all these years. So Got Yours says, on that question about the macro for open all inserts, unfortunately for me, I'm on Cubase 13 Pro. Seems that there's no mixer insert open option. Is there a way to do it with the Project Logical Editor? So I think that particular, if you wanted to do it all, if you have a number of inserts on a particular track, so let's say if I come here and we go and hold down the Option key, is it here? That we could do it, we could open that, but that was kind of a function I think that was added in Cubase 14. So, but we could trigger it from the Project Logical Editor, but it's kind of the function we would use to do it in the Project Logical Editor. I'll just give it a shot just to make sure. But that function may have been introduced in 14, but if you go to the Project Logical Editor, I think we could turn them off or on, but not open the actual inserts. But I'll take a stab at it here. So we could bypass them and turn them off. So we say, okay, we'll say our container type is equal to track. And we'll say our property is it's selected. So we go to the track operation, and so we could bypass the inserts, but not open them for editing. So maybe consider updating. If you get a chance, updating to later version of Cubase, then it'll be available for you. See, Jazz Dude says Greg is the Cubase Yoda. So I've just got asked a lot more questions before other people, so hopefully I can help. All right, so we see what version of Cubase is it. So currently this is Cubase 15. It may have been confusing because it started off in Cubase 14. So then it's looking for a preference that was introduced in 15. So. All right, so we see from Rob WJ says, yes, that's what I thought. I thought it would work, but my send is gray, and I can't activate it to orange like it should be. So let's say if we're here, so let's say we go over here to our Groove agent. So if we go to, let's say, if your sends are, let's say if we make sure it's just not, if it's gray like that, I'm not sure if that's the gray you're talking to, so you might just have to right click and switch it from pre-fader to post-fader, kind of, so you can move it to a post-fader slot. So, or if it's just kind of like grayed out and it's not turning on there, let me know. If you want to send a screenshot to me at clubcubase@steinberg.de, I'd be happy to take a look at it for you. Okay, so you see Rob got it figured out. All right, wonderful to see Steve Leeds checking in from Berkeley, California, in East Bay. All right, so we see Michael Teams has granted my family and myself 1 gallon of Scoopy's Black Diamond ice cream. Thank you very much. My son will probably eat all the ice cream. All right, so I know we had questions from the last live stream we didn't get to, so let's see if we can get to those. Let me open up a quick project here. See if I have in my recent, yeah. All right, so let's say before, saw a question pop in from Jack. Hi, Greg. When using the violins that are built into the current Cubase Pro version, not third-party libraries, how can you make them sound more realistic and expressive? Okay, so let me just add a quick instrument track. So one of the instruments that you get with Cubase is going to be like the Hallian Sonic, or not the Hallian Sonic. You get Iconica Sketch. So let me just get it open here real quick. Let me just check something real quick here. My media bay. Bear with me just a second. Okay. All right, so let me just open up an Iconica sketch patch now. Sorry about that. All right, so a lot of times what we want to do, let's try and all right, I'll just, so let's say if I come over here, so let's say we want to go to, so one of the things you want for like expressive strings is, you know, coming over, because obviously something that's unique to like a string or wind instrument is the ability to change the dynamics after the note has played. So sometimes with drums, you know, you get, you know, once you hit the drum, you can't necessarily do a crescendo on that drum sound. A piano, you play the note, you know, it's like the running joke a lot of musicians have is they'll put like, you know, a C whole note with a crescendo and give it to the piano player and say, play this, because once you kind of strike it, you can't really change the dynamics. But when we're dealing with like string sounds or wind or brass, when we get to play different instruments, so often you'll have what we call like sustain or legato mode. So sometimes people go, oh, when I play this, it's really soft. And that could be just because, so let's say if I come here to my control room, you know, like as we're working with this, you may just go, okay, I want to come over here, and we say, okay, when we go to like a sustain patch, let me just do a quick MIDI reset here. So like as we work with this, just, you know, we can basically just come over here and just say, let me just adjust my mix up here. So, you know, often what you do is just move kind of your modulation wheel. So if you want like the strings to swell and crescendo in, use your modulation wheel to kind of control the dynamics. And this will also kind of add, you know, often more players in. So as you bring that expression in, so, you know, always, you know, don't try to sit there and, you know, like try to play very fast passages. If, you know, when you're looking at the patch, if you're on a sustain patch, you know, you could come over here and do so you're playing shorter notes, you know, use the staccato. Now when you want to hold out a note and change the dynamics, use your modulation wheel by default, and that will kind of control the dynamics, much like you're changing the, you know, how much breath you're blowing into a woodwind or brass instrument, or how much bow arm, you know, the pressure that you're placing on a string from your bow and that will kind of change the dynamics and will make it more expressive and more realistic. All right, Balsa just says, in Cubase 15 in the drum machine, did they address the ability to audition the sounds before moving them to a drum pad? I think it might still be the same. I'm not sure. I kind of brought this up before, but let's go ahead and just add a new drum track. So we can't, so just by coming over here, let's select our kick drum. So it's going to change it, but you can just kind of come over here if you wanted to, just go to, you could just think if you, so you could think that there's a way to kind of switch or to, like once you're here, just to kind of, so once you have it loaded up, you could, but it's still kind of, I'm not sure what the thinking is on it, but you could just easily kind of click here and select different sample sounds to switch easily, but it's still loaded on a pad before, so I'll keep mentioning it. I haven't gotten a good answer why you can't audition before loading it onto a pad for the drum synth, but I think that's working still the same way. Okay, so we see from Terabon, am I just the weirdest person alive that wants to know the time signatures on loops when searching, or is it possible? You're not the weirdest person, so if you're working in 6/8, you probably don't want to look through 400 loops out of 406 that are in 4/4. So when you come over here, let's go to like your media bay. So let's say, okay, I'm looking for, so we'll go to media, we want to go to loops, and then when we do this, we can say, okay, let's go to drum loops, and one of the categories that you have, if you come here under musical, you could see signature. So now you could just simply come over here and say, oh, now I want to see all the 6/8 loops or all the 4/4 loops. So in the media bay criteria, you could just kind of come right over here, go to musical, and set it to time signature, and now you could find your 6/8 drum loop and drag it in. So again, then you can just search by meter if you wanted to, so no problem. All right, so we see Michael Pierce just saying he was bedbound for a lot of December and January, bad back, getting back on his feet now. So hope you're on the mend and back to feeling normal. All right, so we see 12Y Films. Does Hallion Sonic 7 recognize MPE MIDI keyboards? I'm using Cubase 15 Pro. So yeah, it does, but it's not necessarily a setting that you would make in Hallion Sonic 7. So if you come here to your studio setup, click on the plus, and then you'll see the note expression input device. And now this is where you could say, okay, we're using this controller. This controller is mapped for my pressure to send this message or to do this, and my horizontal axis is doing this, my vertical is transmitting this. So it's and then you could have Hallion Sonic 7, Retrolog, Pad Shop, all respond to MPE controllers, so no problem. Steinberg actually kind of invented the whole concept with Cubase 6 or 6.5 when we added note expression. So you just need to come here and define what your MPE controller is, and then you could use that with the included virtual instruments of Cubase, including Halligan Sonic 7. Okay. Okay, so we see from 12Y Films says, thank you very much. Cubase and her team is the best. So there's a lot of great developers, a lot of smart people that with a lot of passion to make like a great product in Cubase. So I'm lucky that I get to show all of their efforts that they put into it. All right, so let's jump to some questions that were mailed in. All right, so we had a question, how to do tap tempo to create a tempo track. All right. So there's a couple ways of doing tap tempo, but if you wanted to make it like a tempo map from it, we'll show you just a quick way. Okay, so let's say now you have kind of like a tap tempo function just right here. So let's say, okay, I want to go to, if I hold down my, let's say I'm playing. So I'm just hold down my shift key and space bar. So we can say we're roughly like 120 beats a minute. So we could now come over and say, okay, we want to insert the tempo event at the selection start, at the playback start position. So we have different functions here. But if we want to actually record something that maybe we could edit in, so I could just add a MIDI track. I'll come over here. And what I'm going to do is just record a single note on my controller. So we'll put this in. All right, so I've just kind of recorded on the downbeats, like just hitting one particular MIDI note. So what we want to do now is go to MIDI, and we'll go to functions and say calculate tempo from MIDI events. So we'll say I tap these at the downbeats, so every beat like quarter notes, and then I can say let's begin at the bar start, and I hit OK. Let's open up our tempo map. So we'll add our tempo track here. And we'll just put on the metronome. And that's the accuracy of how I tap along with it. But if you just need to kind of tap along to an existing audio file, you could do that. Record it as MIDI, just record a single MIDI note. Whatever you want to do, doesn't really matter what pitch it is. Go to MIDI, to functions, and then you could just choose to, I'll select the MIDI event so we could see it, MIDI to functions to calculate tempo from MIDI events. All right, so we see in Cubase 15, how do I extract the groove or feel I have in one track and place it in another project? All right, so let's say I just like this particular drum feel here. So we have like a little drum introduction. All right, so I want to take just that beginning part. I'll just come over here. Let's not do that. Let's go to audio. I'm going to just bounce selection. All right, so what I could do now is just kind of take this particular file, and we have a quantize panel. So what I could do is say, okay, I want to come over, let's say we have eighth notes for our quantize panel. I'm just going to drag the audio file or a MIDI clip directly in. And now I could just, take just a portion of a song and drag that in and have that automatically create a tempo map. So if I also, let's say I want to go find like a drum loop and apply that to others. All right, so let's say I just have this playing, we'll say 88 beats a minute. So if I want to just drag the feel of a loop in, I could now have that as my quantize. If I have MIDI events here, I could now just say, okay, let's quantize, and I could just apply the quantize to this MIDI. So we'll probably see this MIDI shift as we do that. So now we could apply the feel of this audio to MIDI. I could take the feel of the MIDI and apply it to the audio. So if we double click here, I could apply quantize, and now you could just quantize the audio kind of in the same way. All right, next question we had mailed in. Hi, Greg. In the pattern editor down in the parameter lanes, there is a plus button that allows you to add other parameters into the lanes. Within those various choices shown in the list is one that says extra. I assume that this isn't our kind of specific controller. Can you please tell me why this controller is included in Cubase and what a real-world example of using it would be? All right, so let me just jump back to this project. Okay, so I'm not sure. So when we want to add a particular parameter, so let's say if we come over here to our editor and I'm making all right, so let's all right, so let's say if we're here, now if I wanted to, so when we click on the plus sign, we see this extra. So I'm not perfectly certain what that is. So, but this could be dealing with different parameters. So if I wanted to go back, let's say to this particular source, so let's say I go to the drum machine, and now I wanted to automate, let's say the hi-hat pitch here. So let's say if I come here, all right, so what I could do is right click here, and we'll say pattern editor assigned to step automation. So I go back to my pattern editor, and now I could, with my hi-hat, I could come over here and I could randomly assign the pitch. Let's say maybe I don't want it to go that much. So I think it's kind of along those lines. I sent an email to one of my colleagues at Steinberg to see if there's any clarification, but I think it's going to be kind of like assigning the parameters like that. And I kind of read it in the documentation. And I wasn't 100% sure, and I sent it to them after hours on, send it to them after hours in Germany. So with that, I may not get an answer until Monday with that. So, but I'll continue to dig some more on that. Okay, so I have a question. When dragging a pattern from Groove Agent instrument world percussion mix to a Groove Agent track in the project window, nothing appears. After repeated attempts, I dropped it below the Groove Agent track to create a new one. The pattern appears with a new track, but the track won't play. So it says I can drag the pattern up to the original groove track and plays fine, but this is a weird glitch. So I couldn't find the world percussion, but if we open this up, I have like just a percussion, and I'll just take a quick look again to see if there's like a world percussion. So let's say I'll just do like a percussion here. So if I go to my pattern, let's just make sure that when I come here. So when I drag that over from the percussion, that seems to be, and I'll just kind of play this back. I'll make sure that this pattern isn't in kind of auto play. So if it's with the percussion agent, make sure also that it's, maybe it's, you loaded the percussion agent into a different, so let's say if I drag that over, let me just see if it's, because this will be MIDI channel 1, MIDI channel 2. So if we drag that over, but everything kind of seems to work. But let me know exactly what the world percussion is in. But it seems to kind of like when I'm dragging from percussion agent or groove agent pattern, it seems to work as I would expect it. All right. So you see, I've noticed a strange behavior in Cubase 15 Pro. I am using the stereo combine panner on 2 channels in the mixer. I have 2 Q mixes. When using control room Q channels, use current pan settings. The left side value is used on the Q pan settings. I would expect the panning to be centered. All right, so let's take a look at it. So I'll just create empty here real quick. Let's add like 4 audio tracks. They're stereo. I'll just do the combined panner. On each of these. Okay, so let's say on this one, I want to put just a bit of, put an oscillator on it. I'll turn the volume down in the control room first. All right, so let's just put like some pink noise or some noise in there. Okay, so we see that this one is panned all the way kind of to the left. If we pan it straight, so we could hear kind of that panning. Okay, so let's come over to our mix console. All right, and I want to, let's go to all my cues. I want to activate all the cue sends. And I want to use the current mix levels and the current pan settings. All right, so we look at that, like that particular track, it doesn't seem like, so I'm going to switch to listening over to, let's say, our cue mix here. So that is still, like when I'm listening to it here, it's still, so I think visually it may not be showing it, but it's still kind of panned over to the left. But it could be that there's no combined panner on the cue mix. But I will bring that to the attention of the team and see if that's a design intention. Okay. So another question. I have a UR816C connected to my computer. Does the DSP mix FX URC application have to be open while using Cubase? So generally the, all of the settings that you have, once you have like the direct monitoring enabled, you could access from within the Cubase inspector. So if I have this particular track and let's say on my input, I come over, let's make sure that I'm in direct monitoring mode. And when we come to my audio connections, let's say my inputs, I have this connected to input 2. All right, so when I come over to this particular track and we set our inputs, then we see all of the integration, and that's why, the version that comes with Cubase AI, some people think it means like audio interface, but the AI is actually stands for advanced integration, because all the hardware settings that you would get from the separate mixer applet, you could access directly in Cubase. So you don't, so that's why sometimes you may get a message if you try to open it, because Cubase is already assuming all of the control for that particular device internally. All right, next question is mailed in. Can you explain how to use various drawing tools to shape my MIDI CC automation in the key editor, specifically how to draw smooth curves? Okay, so let's come over here. Okay, so there's a couple of tools and ways of doing like smooth curves. So one, let's say we want to look at our modulation. Okay, so let's say we have 2 points. So if I want to start here and I want to go there, so one, we could have 2 points. Now within this point, we could have a Bezier curve, whereas basically when we come here, we could just kind of, you'll see as you hover, like this little point in the center. So we could do different shape Bezier curves like this. For years, no one can make a hit record apparently without these curves, but now you can do it very easily inside of Cubase. So if you wanted to add another point here, you could now just kind of go in between the 2 points. So let's say if I bring this down, we can now have this arched like so. So between any 2 points, if you grab the center. Now there's also specific drawing tools as well. So if we come to your tools, one of the tools you have is, you may see just kind of a straight draw tool. We could also come over here and there's different shapes. So if you want a parabola, I could just draw in a parabola. And if we do this while holding down, if we want to kind of invert the direction, we could hold down like, control to invert. So we could have different shapes, or if we want it to come over here and do like a sine wave, and if we hold down the shift key, so if we wanted this to be that frequency, we could do that. But if we hold down the shift key, I could just say, okay, let's grab our sine wave, and I could say I want like 2 repetitions for every 2 bars, and I could change that particular frequency right there. And the same kind of concept that we have if we wanted to go to like a triangle wave. So we could just kind of come over and draw in different shapes of square wave as well. So all your different kind of, or if you want to randomly paint in as well. And you'll see Cubase just to will kind of automatically interpolate between areas so that your MIDI timing won't be delayed for having 4,000 extra points between various settings. So try the draw tool, or if you have just kind of like straight lines, and you could just select kind of your draw tool, and then if you click, like, you just do like the drop down, you could see the other tools. But if you have that just in the middle, you could do your Bezier curves just like that. All right, so we see next question mailed in. Hi, Greg. I'm using Cubase Pro 15 and Windows 11. When I call up statistics on a track, if I want to lower some of the peaks, is there a quick way to find exactly where those true peaks are? I've been going in and using the range tool to bring down any extreme peaks. However, I just wanted to know if there's another way to find them without having to go through the whole track. Also, once I make my adjustments and run statistics again, there's no change to the statistics. However, if I render the track and run statistics, it'll show different statistics. So to see what effect my changes made, do I always have to render the track, or am I missing something? All right, so let's say if we have a loop going on. Okay. Okay, so let's say we have kind of our loop here. All right, so when we go to statistics, let's come over here. So, I think always a great way of just doing this and kind of maintaining the dynamics is just to kind of do the clip gain between it. Now, when you do this, the clip gain is still playing back the original file, so your statistics won't take into account as you're processing a gain change, which is why you don't see a change until after it's being rendered. It's the same file that's being played back. But let's say if I come here, let's say if I render a particular clip here, or I'll just look at it. So let's go to your statistics. So I think one workaround to do is if you come over here, let's go to your statistics, and we can see, okay, I think if we look at the minimum, the max sample value, so we can see it's minus 35 dB. So let's go now. I've done this on other live streams, but I may forget. If we go to advanced and we go to detect silence, let's set our open threshold at minus 0.35 and analyze. All right, and then I think if we process, that at that point you might be able to find, let me just see. Let me look at the statistics one more time. Yeah, so I think if you go into, I'm trying to remember the settings, but you're not going to see the change until it's rendered because it's actually doing the statistics on the actual audio file as opposed to doing that. But there is, and if you search through the particular index, it was kind of like a featured topic that we did maybe 6 months ago, but I think that there's a way when you go to detect silence to just set this back. But I want to say it was something, and you may have to adjust the time, but let's say, okay, let's say it's minus 0.5. Yeah, but there's a way to kind of do it, and I'll see if I can get it for Tuesday. But, you know, when you are adjusting it, you know, you're adjusting the playback properties of the file with the clip gain, and that's why you're not seeing the particular change. Okay, next question. Says, hi, Greg. I have lots of unfinished projects in Cubase 15 Pro. Some are great, some have potential, and some are meh. But I don't want to delete them yet. How can I give them a star rating to each so that I could see the project rating from the Cubase Pro hub? So I don't think there's a way of seeing it from the hub. So if we're here, so let's say if we go to the hub, we're not going to necessarily see like the star rating. If you go into the media bay, so let's come over here. And if you go into Media Bay, we'll say, let's look for projects on this computer. And then if you want to come over here, you could have your rating for different projects. So you can say, I want to go through my 5-star projects. And these are 2 stars. So now you could say, okay, I'm looking for 5-star projects that are on my Media Bay. Or look for all ratings. So, but it's not going to reflect on the hub. So maybe as you're working, if you want to see it in the hub, you might have to give it a, you know, like a different symbol, or it's like, this one's cool too, you know, or differentiate it somehow with the naming convention. But you could do it in Media Bay, but it's not going to reflect on the particular hub. All right, next question. My Cubase line has glitched out and now it's blue-green. How do I fix that? So I think it's a preference. So when we come over to your settings, and I think it's under transport cursor. So you could come over here. You could change the color for the cursor and the line width. You could show an outline for the cursor if you want. So try to just select the transport and maybe just set these to the default values. And then you should probably get the cursor back how you expected it. All right, next question mailed in. Hi, Greg. Is there in a new drum editor a way to lock some of the rhythm elements? I say like half the produced randomness. I want to lock this half when I hit random again. So as we're working with it, I haven't found a way myself to lock particular like sounds. So let's say if I'm here, let me just add a drum track. So let's say if we're in our editor here, all right, so let's say if I want to just randomize. All right, so, what you can do, so I haven't found a lock command, but, if I just come here to the hi-hats and I just click on the random, like the little dice icon, I guess if it's singular, now I'm only doing that. And if I just say, let's come over here, let's duplicate the pattern, I could now just come right over here, let's duplicate that pattern, and now I want to do random, and let's change it to Euclidean for so while you can't necessarily lock stuff, you could have lots of variations, and then you could experiment. So if you want to go back to your first one, to your second pattern with different hi-hats. So even if you wanted to come over here, let's adjust our velocity. And now I want like different snare. And then once these are dragged to the project, we could just say, okay, I want this to start on this bar. So I want to do pattern 1, pattern 3, pattern 2, pattern 1. So as we listen to it, so while there's not a lock, you could just simply duplicate and kind of play around. And if you've made like a lot of bad edits within, it's like, oh, I just totally have destroyed my particular file here, I could just say, okay, all you have to do is there is undo levels within the, directly within the pattern editor as well. So there's not a lot of consequences if you mess things up. All right, let me jump back to see if we have some more live questions. Thanks for sending questions in advance. You can send them to clubcubase@steinberg.de. All right, great to see Sable Winters on. Hope you had a good time at the Grammys. I see Graham Witcher on from Oxford, England. All right, Willie, I'm gaming asks, a really quick one because I'm too lazy to check the manual. That's kept me employed for many years. Thank you. Says, is the Cubase channel strip by default pre or post insert slots? All right, so when we open up the channel strip here, so let's say open up channel. So let's say we have a channel strip here. So usually as we go kind of left to right, we're going to that's kind of the order of the signal flow. So if I have inserts going on, we can say, okay, I got this insert. So as we go left to right, it's going to go inserts, and then we have our channel strip. Now our channel strip, like if we wanted the EQ to be before the compression but after the gate or whatever, we could just drag and drop to change the signal flow order of this. Now if we wanted this channel strip to be before the signal flow of the inserts, all you have to do is you'll see this little icon here, like this one here, and we could say we see the inserts are visually to the left of the channel strip, but if I click that icon, now the channel strip is visually to the left, and that indicates that that comes in the signal flow. So we could just kind of switch between whatever, if we want the channel strip to be first or the inserts to be first. We could toggle it, and it's not a global setting, so that could be different on every single track. And one comment, I think it's Bandcamp Friday where the artists get full credit, I think I saw online. So if there's a artist that's on Bandcamp that you want to support, I think Bandcamp gives all the money today to artists. So I believe that's going on today. I could be mistaken. Yeah, so I see Rick just saying Greg's going to be late to pick up the kid, so yeah, it's going to be on Tuesday. My wife has to go to Las Vegas for her corporate kickoff. Glad to hear that Michael Pierce is doing better. Okay. Graham Witcher's listening a lot to Hot Mess record. Okay. All right, so we see from Gerald Ely, says, hey Greg, Groove Agents World Percussion Mix shows up if you hit the All button on the instrument groups and then click Drum and Percussion Focus button. All right. All right, let's see if I can find that. Okay. All right, so I'm just going to click on all. I'll scroll down to W. Yeah, so I don't have that. Maybe I don't have it installed on, maybe I don't have a particular library that's installed on there. But let me know what library it is, and I'd be happy to take a look at it. I could have it installed for Tuesday's live stream. Okay, so we see Universal Embassy of Christ NAM says, hi, how can I make Cubase read pitch wheel bender on Halligan Sonic example? I toggle pitch bender with the mouse on screen. All right, so if you have a instance of Halligan Sonic, so let's say we open this up. This isn't the pitch bender that we see here. Let me just open up quick instrument. All right, so you may see like the pitch bend here, but that's not really, that's intended to, like, and this keyboard is only intended to be used for previewing sounds in the instrument. It's not really intended for transmitting MIDI pitch bend into the program. If you want to do that, you could hit the virtual keyboard and Alt K. So now as you play, I think that we could just come over, let me make this larger. But I think that we could use, let me just, so if we come here, if I click on the key, then I think I could actually record it. Let me just get different sound. Okay, so let's say if I want to record this, I could use kind of the built-in. So if I come here, if I move it to the left or right, and then like as we look at it, we could see our pitch bend that's recorded. So this keyboard will be kind of sending pitch bend internally. These keys are sending sounds internally. If you open up Alt or Option plus K to the virtual keyboard, and you just kind of click on a note, hold the mouse down and move to the left or right, that could record pitch bend going kind of left to right. And if you go up or down, you could record modulation. But again, the instrument inside the pitch bend wheel here isn't going to transmit that to Cubase. It's not really intended to be a controller. All right. All right, great to see Peter on from Montreal. Okay. Okay, while I'm gaming, ask one thing I've been wondering, how do I route reverb, delay parameters of the built-in drum machine to its dedicated return channel? I can have dedicated channels for instruments, but not for effects. Okay, so let's take a look. Just do new. So I'm not sure if it's actually sent outside or if it's just solely internal. So okay. Okay, so let me just add some reverb to this particular. All right, so let's say if we come over. So maybe just internal. Let's see if we go to group. All right. So maybe strictly internal. Yeah, I think it's going to be, I think the concept is that it would be, let me just take a look. But you could always route each of these. If you go to the group, we could route each of these to different outputs to run it through different effects. But let's see. So we have our level here. So let's see if there's any routing. So we do pan. Yeah, so I think, you know, the intention is to make it like really easy so that you had like your quick effects here, and you could just go to the group and route it to different outputs if you needed to run external plugins. But I'm not sure if the delays can actually be routed externally, like to its own outputs. Let me just take a look. But it looks like it's going to be just, let me just, yeah, so I think it's going to be just internal for that. But I'll kind of play around with it. Okay. All right, so I see roll percussions under colliding worlds. Let me see if I have the colliding worlds. I may not have it installed on my work computer. Thanks for the clarification. Yeah, I don't have that one, but I could have it installed for Tuesday and see if I could get it all up and running. Sorry about that. I don't have it installed. All right, so we have a question. It says, I'm having a technical problem with Nuendo 14 every time I use the pre-gain to gain stage. It works, but the problem is that for some reason it doesn't turn orange to indicate it's active. All right, let me just take a look. I'll open up Nuendo 14 here. It's on Windows 11, so. Okay, so let's say if I come here, let me just. All right, so say if I come here, let's go to our pre section. I'll go to set up sections, make sure pre is active. Let's go to like the guitar. All right, so let's say if I'm over here on a guitar part and I have my sections. All right, so let's make a pre-section here. So I can see that the pre-gain is active here. So if I want to go to my bass and let's do the pre-section here. And I go to like, let's say my mix console. And we want to again set up our sections and see the pre. So I go to the bass part here. So as I select my bass here, we should see that change reflected here and here. So if I change it, we can see that they're both changing. So it looks like it's kind of functioning as expected there. So let me know if that's behaving differently than yours is. All right, so we see from Universal Embassy, again, it says, Greg, so how do I get Cubase to record what I click with my mouse on the screen? Example, I record, then I click on the VST no key. I want to record with the mouse key. So you have to use, you know, like Hallian Sonic is not going to do that. That doesn't transmit MIDI outside to Cubase. Hold down Alt or Option plus K. This will open up your... that will open up your on-screen keyboard. You could click here and switch, and now you could just play. And once you click here on this screen, you can record that. So that will be recorded, not the keyboard that's inside of Hallian Sonic or Hallian or Pad Shop or Groove Agent, or Groove Agent can. You know, so Hallian Sonic Retrolog, Pad Shop, those keys are just for internal triggering. They don't record, they don't transmit MIDI to Cubase because we just use the on-screen keyboard for that. All right. See, Val says, ugh, I made it. So says, and Val's just asking, how am I doing? How's Nam been? So Nam was great. Got to hang out with a lot of my... It's wonderful to see so many friends from throughout the world. Some of my friends I haven't seen in like 7 years. Was able to get coffee with them in Germany and see a lot of my colleagues from Steinberg. So it was great. Always wonderful to see so many of my colleagues and former colleagues. So, all right. So Michael Graybill says, grateful to Cubase Hangouts today and Greg's calming words, visiting Chattanooga to say goodbye to my grandmother, who's the biggest fan of my life, still using beloved RD100 she gifted me a long time ago. Yeah, I'm sure that's hard to do, but it's always great to have an instrument that your grandmother gave you. So I have a balalaika that my grandmother gave me that I'll always have. So. All right, so we have a question from Val. Is it possible to already cut out and edit clips while it's recording, like the bar before or something? If not, maybe a major future feature upgrade. All right, so you see, so one way that I've done this, and I think I set it up for WGBH, which is kind of like a big in Boston area. It's a big like national public radio, and they're also a partner with the BBC. And so let me just set up a project, and this is something I set up for them because they need to edit while the show is going on, which is always kind of a fun scenario for a DAW. And so I'm gonna just come over here. Let's create a group track, and I'll just put a little oscillator on this. Right, so we'll come over, we'll just put a little noise on it. I'll just turn this down. All right, so let's say we're recording audio. All right, so in Cubase, you always have kind of a, like a buffer that's recording, so you could do that. So I'm going to come over here, let's add an audio track, and I'm going to set it the input from this group. Okay, so when I come over here and we record this track, so when you go to like your preferences, and this is in Cubase, I'll show it in the window here real quick. Let's come over, so when you see under record general or record audio, you'll have like a 1 second pre-record. So let's say we'll just move this to 2 seconds. Okay, so I'm recording. Okay. So if I just come here, like I could punch in and punch out. So now that I punched in and punched out, I could take this one track and let's say, okay, I need to just do like a fade in, fade out. Now, even though I punched in and punched out, we could just come over and let's say I have a little bit of a gap. I could just simply roll that back. So I could kind of do editing. So really all I have to do is kind of, let's say, punch in, punch out. And since I have that pre-record on, I could just come over here and say, okay, I need to join these two clips together. I could do a crossfade between them. So I could just kind of do, okay, I need to adjust my clip gain here for this. I need to make it louder. I need to do a fade in. So while it's going on, even though I may have a gap when I punch in and punch out, all those gaps, since it's doing the pre-record, we can just simply go right back exactly to the areas. So we could do a lot of trimming and cutting different parts and move this part here while it's still recording and doing other aspects as well. So if you need to actually do recording while it is, you need to do edits while it is recording, you could just use kind of the punch in, punch out functions right there. So let me know if that would work for you. So, but we have people who are doing broadcast and it was like, oh, it's so great to be able to do that. All right, so we see from John Barry, just says that switching the QWERTY keys to an on-screen keyboard is great. Val just says, these are the moments. It's like, see, Michael Graybill says, awesome. Yeah, I'm never giving that piano up. It's good. It's a wonderful instrument, so you should have it for many years. Safe travels. We know that there's lots of fun snowstorms that have been going on. All right, so we see from Val, says, that's perfect. I'm quick with my fingers. And Val says I could just put record on a certain button. I could reach fast. Yeah. Jazz Dude just saying lots of hidden gems in Cubase. Just takes a creative user to make them do great things. Val just says, thank you, Greg. You're welcome. All right. So nice comment from Val. Just says, I'm so thankful for your knowledge and help and all for free, dude. Thanks, man. Glad you like NAMM. It's definitely on my bucket list. Yeah. All right. We see DC checking in from the Bahamas. We see John Costigan says, thanks for all your help and tips and tricks. Have a high quality weekend. So looking forward to it. Have Monday off from work. All right. So I think we are out of questions and we're just about out of time. I want to thank everyone for all the wonderful questions that people have sent in and asked. I hope that everyone's learned a new tip or trick. And if you have, make sure you hit the like button. Tell your friends that we do this and offer it as a kind of a standard service at no charge so that everyone can be using their Cubase better, smarter, learn a new tip or trick, learn from other people's questions. And again, Tuesday, I may be a little abbreviated just because my wife is out of town. And then Wednesday, I'm going to San Antonio. I get back late Thursday. So there's a possibility if there's like a horrible weather storm, I might get delayed, but I'm expecting to be on time for a normal live stream on Friday, but I'm getting back around midnight from San Antonio after presenting at Texas Music Educators Show. So if there's any chance, I will let people, if you don't see like a live stream up, that could mean that I'm delayed travel. I'm hoping not. I've had a lot of that, but with that, we'll go ahead and wrap up. Thanks again for all the wonderful questions, and we look forward to seeing everyone on Tuesday and next week. And everyone, please stay safe and healthy and have a wonderful weekend, and goodbye.